Hello, my name is Caroline Doherty, and today I'm going to be talking about two learning theories, which are known as behaviorism and constructivism, and I will also be talking about two cognitive processes, which are known as self-regulation and transfer, and this is in the context of an 11th or 12th grade history class. So our first learning theory is known as behaviorism, and so the basics of behaviorism is that it states a learner's behavior is influenced solely by external stimuli, which includes objects, actions, or events that occur after a behavior is induced, and this results in conditioning of what behaviors are acceptable in the classroom. This is a bit more passive of a theory because it states that a learner's process is based solely on external stimuli and knowing what will happen if a certain behavior is played out. So it's more passive in the way that students aren't really constructing their own meaning. They are kind of just constructing their meaning based off of external stimuli. So there are four ways that behaviorism is enforced in the classroom. So the first one is through positive reinforcement. Now this brings an increase in behavior because a stimulus is being presented after a way a student behaves in a certain way. Now, one of my examples for positive reinforcement is, let's say, in my classroom I ask my students to do an optional essay question, because if they do the optional essay question, they will earn extra credit. Now, I'm asking them to do this in an optional sense. I'm not requiring them to do it, but if they do it, they will earn extra credit. Now, this is positive reinforcement because this stimulus is being presented. There's another stimulus being added on, so that it's the stimulus of earning extra credit that will make the students go the extra mile. And it's also increasing the behavior because if I ask them again in the future to do an optional essay and to earn extra credit, they will most likely do it because there's a stimulus being presented. And then we have negative reinforcement, and then again this brings an increase in a behavior because a certain stimulus is being removed. So let's say that I asked my students to do research and write a paper on 20th century politics in Europe, let's say. So one of my students wants to eliminate the stimulus of stress. So he starts the paper right after I assign the paper instead of waiting for the last minute to do it. So he is in turn removing the stimulus of stress, which is negative reinforcement, and also encourages the students to start the assignment sooner because stress will be eliminated, and in turn they will probably receive a better grade than they would if they started the assignment the night before it was due. So with the removal of stress, because stimulus is being removed, it increases the behavior of the student starting the assignment sooner. It's an example of negative reinforcement. So then we also have presentation punishment. Now, as opposed to positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, presentation punishment decreases a behavior because it results in something being unpleasant or undesirable for the student. Now, let's say that I'm lecturing about the Civil War to my class, and there's a group of students in the back talking. Now, what I present to the students is if you continue to talk, it will result in detention. Now, this is presentation punishment because detention is obviously undesirable for the students because it takes up time, and who really wants to go to detention? Especially 11th and 12th grade students who feel that detention is kind of childish because it's almost like a timeout. So the students are going to decrease their behavior of talking because they don't want to be presented with the stimulus of detention. And then our last one is removal punishment. And again, similar to presentation punishment, it brings a decrease in behavior due to the risk that something desirable to them will be removed if they continue the behavior. So let's say my class really has not been doing well on tests, but I decide to take them on a field trip to the Gettysburg battlefield, maybe to increase their learning and their desire to learn more in class. Especially if I'm teaching a 12th grade class who really doesn't feel like doing a lot of work anymore, I decide to bring them to the Gettysburg battlefield. But my condition is, if you fail another test or quiz that I present, this will be taken away. So this is looked at as a desirable or pleasant stimulus because going on a field trip is desirable because you get out of class and you get to be more active. But if you fail the test, you won't be able to go. So this decreases the behavior of not being prepared and in turn will let them go on the field trip. So behaviorism goes hand in hand with the cognitive process of self-regulation. So self-regulation is when a learner guides their thoughts, actions, and behavior in order to reach their long-term goals. So through behaviorism, they condition themselves to learn good behavior in the classroom. So learning this good behavior, they can regulate it and in order to reach their goals. So an example of self-regulation is I assign a test on Monday for my students in my Civil War era history class. So one of my students is asked to participate in the group with like a study group, but she knows that the last time she did that, she got an F. So she self-regulates herself. She knows that her long-term goal is to receive an A on her next test. So what she does is she studies on her own and not with her friends, even though in an 11th and 12th grade history class context, it's more desirable to study with your friends because you get to socialize a little more, but she self-regulates and she knows that this is her ultimate goal, so she studies independently. Then this brings us to our next learning theory, and this is constructivism. So basically, constructivism is when learners create or construct their own interpretation, their own representation of new knowledge. And so this can be achieved through connecting their new knowledge or new stimulus being presented to them with prior experience and prior knowledge. So this is a little bit more active than behaviorism because students are asked to create their own theories and their own meaning for learning, unlike passive learning through behaviorism, which external stimuli shapes behavior. So our example for constructivism is I asked the class to relay meaning between why the Battle of Gettysburg is relevant in today's society. So instead of having them work individually or me lecture to them why it's still relevant in today's society, I asked them to work in a group. So they all have different experiences, they all have different prior knowledge, and so they can build and construct their own meaning of why the Battle of Gettysburg is still relevant today, while I provide some scaffolding, which means keeping them on the right track and making sure that they're staying within the realms that I want them to stay. So building off of their own prior knowledge and their prior experiences, the students learn why the Battle of Gettysburg is still relevant today by using their past experiences and their past knowledge. So constructivism goes hand in hand with transfer, which is our last learning process or cognitive process. So transfer is the ability to apply prior knowledge and skills to new information and situations, and this is imperative for constructivism because constructivism preaches that students need to construct their own meaning of new information through their prior knowledge and prior experiences. So my example for transfer is instead of me lecturing in the front of the class why the Union won the Civil War, I can ask them to refer to their prior knowledge of the battles, such as the Battle of Gettysburg, which was a turning point for the Union in the Civil War, and say, transfer your knowledge from the Battle of Gettysburg to why the Union won the Civil War. And this results in meaning making and provides for a more active environment like constructivism, so the students can construct their own meaning of why the Union won the Civil War based off of their prior knowledge of the Battle of Gettysburg or other battles of the Civil War. So, like I said before,